It's time for the United States to return to the system that made us richer and more powerful than ever before. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens. Does that make sense, right?
Does that make sense? Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. So, well, I give Trump credit as usual because it's a fair show in America. The External Revenue Service was catchy. He did that in a couple of speeches, including at the inauguration. Well, we were gonna get the money from China and other countries, but we're not. So what they do is they impose the tariffs actually on companies that import in, and those companies then usually pass on most of it to us, and we pay it anyway to the consumers. And so what it winds up becoming is a really regressive tax. So once you get rid of the income tax, which he's now threatening, we'll get to that in a sec. What happens is then the rich pay a lot less, but the average person who's a consumer pays a lot more in tariff/taxes. And so it's redistribution of income to the top. And there's one other giant problem with it, but I'll get to that in a sec.
So, as you heard in that very brief clip, it appears that Donald Trump wants to do away with income taxes and replace it with tariffs. Now, do I think he's actually going to pursue getting rid of federal income taxes? No, I don't think he's gonna do that. I actually think this story is hiding what is likely to happen because Donald Trump is very much interested in extending his tax cut bill from 2017. And in order to do that, he's gonna make an argument, the Republicans in Congress are gonna make an argument that doing this tax cut is totally fine. It's not going to add to the deficit because we have a pay for, and the pay for is gonna be tariffs. So let's go through this on a more granular level. So when it comes to revenue for the federal government, they currently generate some revenue from tariffs. That is true, but we're not talking about a lot of cash. We're talking about less than $100 billion annually. Tariffs have accounted for just 2% of annual revenues in recent years. In fact, take a look at this chart put together by Reuters, which gives you a sense of where the federal government gets the majority of its revenue from. So as you can see, the blue and the green represents individual income taxes and payroll taxes. So the bulk of revenue that the federal government generates comes from those two sources. Corporate income taxes, much smaller, but even corporate income taxes bring in more revenue to the federal government compared to tariff payments, which is represented by that little red sliver that you see on the graph, okay? So by and large, the majority of revenue from the federal government comes from both individual income taxes and payroll taxes. Okay, now, obviously tariffs would have to increase pretty substantially in order to cover the lost revenue from ending income taxes. Now, the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation estimated Trump's most extreme tariff proposals, a 20% universal tariff plus a 60% tariff on China's exports to the US, would raise about $3.8 trillion over the 10-year budget window, falling short of the $4.3 trillion needed to fully offset the cost of making the expiring tax cuts permanent.
Yeah, so that's my second beef with the tariffs. Because look, some degree of tariffs could make sense.
Definitely, yeah.
It's not to say that you shouldn't have any tariffs on any goods. And I think there's a great argument to be made that if a different country, for example, China puts a tariff on us on a certain product, that we do likewise. We just mirror what they do so that we get to parity. And I don't want other countries taking advantage of us. Now, having said that, all this tariff talk is exactly what Anna said. It's to mask the 4.3 trillion they're about to give away to largely the rich. And Trump also wants to lower the corporate taxes from 21%, which is already maniacally low, to 15%. So more giveaways to corporations. So what he's gonna do is he's gonna tell his base, oh, that's okay, the tariffs are gonna make up for it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, yeah.
And that's not gonna come close. Even if he did all the tariffs and they didn't drive up inflation and they didn't get us into a trade war and they didn't create havoc, it still raised about 10% of the money you need to cover those tax cuts.
Yes.
So it's a trick, guys. It's a trick to try to pass. And you know what Trump did last time? He added $8.4 trillion to the deficit. And he's gonna do it again. And he's gonna pretend that the tariffs will save the day 12 years from now. Nonsense. They're not going to save the day at all. And we're going to be so massively bankrupt after we redistributed all the money to the top.
Yeah, and look, it is true that the tariffs that Donald Trump implemented against China in his first term did not lead to inflation. In fact, even the Biden administration had a debate about it when they were in charge, and they realized, oh wow, this actually did not lead to inflation. And they not only kept Trump's China tariffs, they expanded upon them. So I wanted to just kind of make that point. There are some instances where targeted tariffs might make sense. However, if you're gonna do tariffs across the board, and you're gonna do away with the federal income tax, I think that is gonna lead to hyperinflation. Not only because the consumers will be forced to absorb the cost of those tariffs, but there's also the issue of money supply, right? If you're not being taxed for federal income, well then you might have a little more disposable income. More money supply means more inflation, does it not?
Yeah, so look, those are great points. But on top of that, look, Trump does this all the time. He proposes something so extreme like getting rid of the income tax entirely so that it appears to be a compromise when they give away $4 trillion to the rich. So they're
gonna do that anyway.
It's absolutely impossible to get rid of the income tax. If we got rid of the income tax, we'd have no money, including for beloved defense in Israel. So there's no way it's gonna happen, okay? So just on pork barrel projects alone, they'd never allow it. These guys are all owned by the donors. So the income tax being taken, it's just an outlandish, ridiculous idea. No one should give it 1 ounce of credibility. And no, I'm not interested in a compromise where you get all of your tax cuts for the rich and all of your tax cuts for corporations.
Now, it doesn't matter what you want because they're gonna get that, okay? They're gonna get that, and this is what the compromise is. So Reuters reports that the House Ways and Means Committee included a 10% across the board tariff in its menu of options to pay for extending the tax cuts. It estimated such a tariff regime would fetch $1.9 trillion over 10 years, according to the memo. Extending the tax cuts Trump passed during his first term and which expired this year would cost $4 trillion, to your point, Cenk, over 10 years, according to estimates from analysts. And so
I just gotta say that 1.9 trillion is outlandish. I don't think it's gonna come anywhere near that. But even if they got everything they wanted and their dream scenarios happened, they still missed by 2 trillion.
Yeah, exactly. Look, the final thing I'll say about this is there were some ideas that Trump had on the campaign trail that I would like him to actually pursue, okay? So for instance, this was a small thing, but I actually think it's a big deal. He had proposed making the interest on car loans tax deductible. And if you think that sounds outlandish, it isn't. In fact, that was something that consumers were able to do when filing their taxes up until 1986. I don't know why they got rid of that tax break, but if you're looking for tax cuts, I get it, you're gonna look out for your rich buddies. But how about some targeted tax cuts that actually help ordinary American citizens?
Yeah, look, we can go on and on, earned income tax credit. There's many different ways that you could attack the issue of taxes. And by the way, do it in a way that's popular and get more of your proposals through because you've become more popular, but they're not gonna go in that direction. They're gonna go in an extreme direction because the number one point of the oligarchy that was sitting behind Donald Trump is a kleptocracy. I mean, these words, they're not great words, I don't like to use them often. Basically, they're gonna rob us, okay? And the donors of the Democrats also robbed us. But then when MAGA thinks that the donors of Trump won't rob us, I find that to be hilarious. Why do you think they gave him all that money? For the general welfare? Because they love MAGA so much? Come on, guys, don't be naive. So all those billionaires that were on the stands during Trump's inauguration, they're all going, tax cuts, tax cuts. They're gonna save billions and they're gonna dump it on your lap. And they're gonna, and I don't want any Republican talking about balanced budgets from here on out. They don't want to balance budgets at all. They never have in my entire lifetime. Trump's gonna destroy the budget with this again. Their only priority is tax cuts for the rich. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get
playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.